Greetings, friends, and welcome back to Spirit Experiments. One of my favorite cards from Daybreak is the Solar Panel Bug Dragon Phosvocell, and I swear it's only partially because I happened to pull a full art. Larvacell and Phosvocell have seen exploration as a replacement Nexus enabler in Thunder Nexus, and in Rise from the Ashes strategies, respectively. And Anacell, well, Anacell is trying their best. I want to try and determine the most effective use for Phosvocell, but in doing so, I'm setting myself some rules for testing its viability. 1. I am not allowed to use Rise from the Ashes, not because I believe it's a bad approach, but because Wert has already made a video on a more combo FTK style strategy with Phosvocell, and I have no desire to step on his toes. If you haven't seen his video, please go check it out and watch his other stuff while you're at it. Link in the description. 2. The deck I create should aim to maximize the utility of Larvacell. Phosvocell is obviously very powerful when it makes it onto the board, but playing Phosvocell without Rise also requires running Larvacell and Anacell, and I think getting value out of Larvacell is necessary if the Ascension line's added risk of bricking is to be justified in a deck. With those guidelines laid out, set out your solar panels and pray to Zeus for good weather, because today's spirit experiment is Phosvocell Thunder. Here are the materials I landed on for today's experiment. I think Phosvocell could fit into either a solar or thunder deck, and the Ascension line itself actually has more obvious synergy with solar Nexus enablers. But I went with a thunder list for a couple reasons. Firstly, both Solar Nexus and Foretell Solar decks use Apollo, and including the Phosvocell line introduces 4 to 5 extra cards you either can't or do not want to add to your hand with your Apollo activations. Secondly, Solar decks already have multiple Elestrals that allow you to Nexus, while having effects with benefits beyond just the Nexusing. Adding Larvacell into a Solar deck would essentially mean playing a strictly worse Nexus Elestral just for the higher ceiling of Phosvocell. But even then, Lustragon requires less spirit commitment, is less bricky, and can pop anything, not just runes. On the other hand, Thunder has a ton of independently strong pieces, but lacks a true Nexus enabler. Even without one, Thunder Nexus just won a tournament, even though the only thing making it a Nexus deck is the 3 Altar of Stars. Larvacell's Nexus effect not only opens up opportunities to easily re-trigger cards like Astrabbit, but also synergizes with Boombat in a similar way to the Wet Bat deck concept that uses Poseidon. If a Larvacell is kept alive for a turn, you can Nexus onto a cast Boombat so it stays alive after expending for its effect and can be used again next turn. I think solar builds, as well as builds using an Argo artifact package, could have potential, and I plan to look into them in the future if I continue playing Phosvocell. But this approach seems the most promising at first glance. Let's go through the card by card. First up, we have 2 Larvacell, 1 Anacell, and 1 Phosvocell. We're only including 2 Larvacell because it does very little on its own, so we want to avoid drawing multiples. Our Thunder card inclusions are fairly self-explanatory, given they just won a tournament and are staples in most Thunder decks. We have 3 Astrabbit, 3 Jolton, 2 Mount Olympus, 3 Elichic, 2 Zeus, 2 Race to the Top, and 1 Boombat. We're maining a Boombat rather than siding all 3 like in Swolax's list because of the potential synergy with Larvacell. Next up, since we have to devote a decent portion of our Spirit deck to Luminapes for Phosvocell's Ascension chain to be possible, I'm including a Solar package, so that the Luminapes aren't just dead weight if we don't draw Larvacell. We're running 2 Corvishine, 1 Peegleam, and 1 Golden Fleece. Corvishine and Peegleam get Solar Spirits on board so that Larvacell can potentially Nexus a Solar to itself, while also having independently beneficial receive effects. P-Gleam offers extra removal, and Corvashine can, on rare occasions, allow you to put a drawn Anicel or Phosvocell back into your deck before shuffling with Astrabbit, Jolton, or Elichix effects. Golden Fleece can act as an emergency Nexus Bank, and can be cast on a summoned Phosvocell to save it from common outs like Earthquake and Poison-Tipped Arrow. Since it increases defense, it can also be used in conjunction with Race to the Top, or just to help stick an Astrabbit or Corvashine. Our other runes are once again fairly self-explanatory. 3 Ambrosia, 3 Gorgons, 3 PTA, 2 Shield, 2 Altar of Stars, and 1 Tsunami. I'm maining a Tsunami because I'm running a Leviathan in the Spirit deck and 2 Eddies in the side deck anyway, so we can afford to include an extra tool to help our key pieces stick on board and accrue value. Speaking of the Spirit deck, we have the 1 Leviathan, 6 Luminapes, and 13 Zaptors. 3 Luminape is the absolute minimum needed for the Phosvocell Ascension play, with a few extras to utilize our other solar cards, as well as allowing us to re-enchant solars to Phosvocell to trigger his effects over multiple turns. In the side deck, we have the other 2 Boombats, 1 Dratora, 2 Eddies, 2 Thunderstorm, 2 Dense Fog, 2 Cryoblast, 1 Resting, 1 Owloon, 1 Flurmine, and 1 Pandora's Box. I wanted to try out Pandora's Box as a tech option against Draking and Cryoscorch decks, both of which I expected people to be trying out, given they are new and topped the webcam tourney respectively. With our materials laid out, how does this deck fare in the field? But first, if you're enjoying this video and want to see more like it, be sure to like the video and subscribe to the channel. Thanks! I took this deck to locals and to the 10-15 weekly webcam tournament, going 2-1-1 and 2-2 respectively. The second altar was substituted for a Circle the Sky at locals and a third shield at the webcam, as I only had 1 copy of altar at the time. I swapped to shield in between events because a drawn circle not being altar likely actively lost me 2 separate games. While this won't be the norm, I'm going to forego game footage for this video's field test. The games I did get to record don't really clearly represent the deck's strengths and weaknesses, so I'll save you all the time and just explain instead. My main conclusion from this experiment is that the successes of the deck are in spite of Phosvocell's inclusion rather than because of it. While the Phosvocell Ascension play went off a few times and got value, it never felt like it won me the game, nor accomplished something that the more standard Arcolith wouldn't have done a comparable job of. On the other hand, there were multiple times I lost with a Phosvocell or Anicel in my hand, where something like Arcolith or a removal piece could have helped me stabilize or survive. While Phosvocell has one significant leg up on Arcolith in its ability to pop back row, even bluff setting usually forces you to either hope they don't have shield or play slow, giving the opponent more time to draw removal. And it's definitely not an issue of not committing enough to getting Phosvocell on board. In the mirror match, my opponent ran 2 copies each of Anicel and Phosvocell, got both Ascensions off in 1 game without a back row response, and still lost, getting outed by normal cast Boombat and normal cast P-Gleam. The deck performed fairly well overall, with multiple losses being purely due to my own misplays, but the all-around strength of the Thunder core was the primary reason for the deck's successes. As I alluded to, P-Gleam was the strongest performer out of the Solar package, with Corvashine and even Golden Fleece having some value. But again, these cards would be stronger in a dedicated Solar package, as in a Thunder deck, there are stronger cards to play if you aren't mandated to run Luminapes for Phosvocell. I hope that Phosvocell can find a home in the future. And as I said, I do want to test it out in other builds. But for now, the solar panel dragon doesn't seem to be as valuable or worth implementing as real life solar panels are. But what do you think? How would you go about using Phosvocell to its full potential? Let me know in the comments, as well as any changes or deck ideas you'd like to see in a future episode. Thank you very much for watching, and happy labbing!